Hallo und herzlich willkommen zum Anna Schaub Coaching Podcast, der Podcast für wissenschaftlich basiertes Coaching für dein erfülltes Leben. So, welcome to a new podcast episode. I invited an interview partner for you this time. It's Mr. Lucas Dixon from Australia. Welcome to my podcast, Lucas.
It's a pleasure to be here, Anna. Thank you for, we finally got around to it. You asked me 6 months ago. I said, yeah, sure, let's do it. 6 months went by and here we are.
Yeah, but I'm really happy this worked out. And
Yeah.
as you hear, dear listeners, it's going to be in English. So I'm going to try my best. Please forgive me for not speaking perfectly. And also, excuse my heavy German accent. I'm trying to do my best.
It's not heavy at all, Anna. I speak Australian English and we barely speak English either. I'll try my best.
We're both trying to give our best. And I just told Lucas earlier, it's really funny because my first exchange I actually did in Brisbane when I was a student and I was 16 years ago. So maybe there's a slightly Australian accent in my English as well, because that's the first language I learned.
You are an honorary Australian.
I love that. I've been there. It's now like 25 years ago, or really and I have never been back, but I really want to come back soon because I really like the country. Yeah, I really like the people. You're so easygoing. I really like the atmosphere. So I'm definitely going to come back soon.
Oh, it'll be great to have you back.
So I invited Lucas today because he is a professor at the University of Queensland in Brisbane. And you are a psychologist and you do really interesting research, which I came upon when I did some research for my book. And you have a really interesting research field, I think. You're researching the effects of the belief of manifestation, which is a really big trend over here in Germany, I guess in Australia as well. Maybe first of all, you can say a little bit more about yourself and what you do exactly. And I would be really interested in how you started it. Like, how come you started this kind of research?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I guess if I was going to start with how I started, I was always interested in personal development, probably from when I was about 16.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 43 now, so for a while. And then I made a career change about 15 years into leaving school. I was a musician. That was my first job. I've had 3 jobs. My second job, as I started to really get into the personal development industry, I was certainly a manifester. I'd read The Secret, all of the books that I could get my hands on at the time. What I found was that I was feeling quite unfulfilled about 15 years into my career in an industry where I think most people would think you would be quite fulfilled doing something you love, like music. I had to sort of do a lot of soul searching and look at what was unfulfilling about that. Along that path, I realized after being helped by coaches and had a psychologist and did all sorts of weird and wacky things, whatever I could get my hands on to help. And I thought I'd like to do this for other people. And I think a lot of coaches get into coaching for a reason too. They've been clients themselves. And I don't think it's always a great reason, but I did. It was a motivation. And as I entered into that industry, doing some training and then started to see clients, that was very interesting to think about the power of the mind, the power of ourselves to be able to make changes in our lives, and maybe the strengths of our mind and the strengths of ourselves, but then also coming up against the limitations.
Mm-hmm.
If you work out when you probably start with clients as a coach, seeing clients with a lot of high expectations and naive enthusiasm. And of course, that's important because that's part of our jobs. But at some stage, I think I had to learn to lower my expectations and be more present with clients. And so I think the idea of manifestation started to wear thin on me. I felt there were some issues with that level of optimism that I had about what people could achieve with just sort of thinking the right way or trying to use their mind. But I had one particular thing that was very it was kind of like a turning point, I think, that really drove home maybe the problems that I found really buying into the idea of manifestation, which I'm going to say, if you look at manifestation as what was said in the books like The Secret, then what we're talking about is like if you have certain thoughts, those thoughts lead to certain outcomes in your life. Your beliefs shape not only your own behaviors, but in some way go out into the universe and are those same beliefs are attracted back. So if you believe that you're healthy, you have healthy outcomes. If you believe that you're, it also goes along with the idea that positive and negative thoughts bring those things to you. So negative thoughts could even cause you to have, physical symptoms. Well, I'll give you the example that I came across. I was in a supervisory session with other coaches, and it was the head supervisor we would sit there and we would talk about our issues or our wins or goals, but also the problems we might be struggling with clients. And one of the other students there said to me and the supervisor, come out of remission from cancer, and I've got another tumor. And the supervisor, who was, I guess, meant to be our mentor, someone who we looked up to, just exclaimed to everyone, "Oh, you just keep popping those tumors out, don't you?" Which I don't know if that translates that way.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So she believed in the power of the mind to cause illness and to heal illness. And she just, the complete lack of empathy that she showed for this student who was obviously very upset and never came back again. I spoke to the student afterwards, and I guess we debriefed, and she was okay, but just, broke that trust. And then I thought to myself, this veteran really of the coaching industry was someone who was seeing clients every day and perhaps projecting this belief onto her clients. And so it's really when it dawned on me that there was a real dark side to believing things in the extreme like this. And so that, if I was then just to make a long story short, several years later, about 10 doing confidence and self efficacy and image, these are all important things, visualization. There's been sporadic pieces of research done, but nothing on does believing in this idea of manifestation itself and practicing those behaviors actually have any kind of effect that we can detect scientifically. So that was what I was interested in looking at, how it affects our decision making. And that's the long story that's led me to you, Anna, right here.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think I had a similar kind of moment as you just described, because I had a client and her parents died a few years ago, and she was really, really struggling because she was like, yeah, but what did I had to do with it? She was like, but how did I cause this with my thoughts? Because she had the same idea of what you like telling this, like you can read in The Secret, you have the power with your thoughts. And she was really struggling with guilt because she was like, yeah, but how did I cause this? That my parents died, and I really have to figure this out, and I have to get rid of these thoughts, because otherwise maybe my husband and my child are going to die too. So she was really, really struggling and like heavy with guilt. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is not good. This is not good. This can't be it. There's something wrong. This is just wrong. And that's when I started to look in, how does it actually work? Like, how does manifestation act? What kind of power do we actually have? Is it really just like a thought and then you can like change the universe? So it's really funny. Like, I had the same kind of moment as you described. And that's when I came upon your research. I looked into a documentary in a German channel. I told you earlier, it's called the ARD, which is a German channel. And you spoke there as an expert. And when I saw that interview, I was really fascinated because, as you said, at the meantime, there's a lot of research about how manifestation works. Like, you can really look into that. People did a lot of research about that. But what was new in your research is you research, like, what is the negative or maybe even the positive, as you're going to tell us soon, the belief in manifestation. That's really interesting, I think, because that's what I experienced in my coaching session, that it can have really, really bad effects. So I'm really curious about your finding because you did some research on that. But before we start I would start with the question, which is like maybe on everybody's mind. Does manifestation work? And if it works, how does it work? What did you come apart?
I mean, I'm going to give the standard academic answer to that.
Yes.
And the first answer is, it depends on what you mean by manifestation. So we should probably start there. And then we can talk about whether it works or not. I've spoken to a lot of people, opportunities to talk to, journalists and people from all walks of life, news and journalists and coaches and, just interested people. And everyone differs a little bit in how they would define manifestation. But I think there's probably two ways that people think about it. You tell me. I would also be interested, Anna, in how you would define it, because then that would help us to move forward. It's my understanding, I guess, the way we thought about it in this developing the scale that we used in our studies, measure people's degree of belief in manifestation, is that there's at least two parts. We have like the personal power component of manifestation, which is that if I want to achieve a goal, if I want to achieve something external to me, some kind of success in life, that I should at least have the kinds of thoughts and adopt the kinds of beliefs of someone who would be the person who would be able to have those things in life. That there's something about trying to match yours with the type of person to be able to get that goal. And so you imagine that have a lot of intuitive truth to the idea of almost like faking it till you make it. That there's obviously an important component for knowing what you want and setting an intention and setting a goal. But then I think that the manifestation component is that once you've done that, you're very much focused on trying to match your, I guess, consciousness and everything that goes around that, emotions, your thoughts, and even the way, you dress, and maybe you write a pretend check to yourself and put it on the bench. You have your vision board. You're arranging everything in your life to match that goal. Mm-hmm. We call that symbolic behavior in the scale, which is this idea that you're making things symbolic of the way you want things to be in the future. That's the personal power element. The second element is what we call cosmic collaboration. And that's really the belief that if you do those things, then that sends out an energy or some kind of like message really to the universe or a higher power. Some people might call it God. And then there's a powerful unconscious mind, and that we're programming our unconscious mind to adopt a certain belief about ourselves, which will then sort of push us into action. But I think, at least in how we were defining manifestation, it was really this more extreme belief in the idea that the thoughts alone have this almost magical effect on external reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we were to talk about that version of manifestation, I got plenty to say about what the positives and negatives of that might be. But I'd be interested to know as well if you might define it a little differently, and we can talk about the two different definitions if you want.
I think I would define it quite similar. I think it really is a pity that manifestation has these two sides, because on the one hand side, I think it really is powerful, and I'm really I'm in the coaching business, and the idea of like setting your goal and reaching it, and I mean the word itself, manifesting, doesn't mean anything else than just if like the idea of that you have the power, the goals, and manifest whatever you want to have in your life. I really like that idea. Like, as you said, there is some really scientific research. We talked about Dr. Gabriele Oetting, who I did an interview with, and she found out that, like, how does that work? Like, when you visualize something positive, that actually doesn't work that well. You need to think of the obstacles. But still, this whole process of like setting a goal really helps you reaching the goal. So there are some tools like, yeah, it really helps you reaching your goal. So this idea of manifestation, as you describe it, I really like, and I work with a lot. But the second idea I really agree on this, you can just think of something and it just like appears magically because of the magic power of your thoughts. I think that is actually kind of dangerous, because what I found out then I heard stories where people just quit their job and waited till the universe is going to send them a new job and money. And I really heard crazy stories because of this belief. And as I said, I think it is a pity, because on the one hand side, it really has some positive effects but if you skip to the magic side, then it's going to be really dangerous. And I think in my book, I have two limitations of manifestation. First of all, the limitation is how you're going to achieve the goal. Like, if you're going to do something and work for it, you're going to achieve it, not by just like magically with your thoughts. And the second limitation I found, you can't manifest anything. There are some limitations. There's just some things. For example, I just heard the other day that somebody was talking about that you can win the lottery, just manifesting the lottery win. And I'm like, no, there's like, you can't do anything about it with like, whether it's like energy or you just have no influence on this kind of, thing in your life. So this is what I see are the two limitations.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think they're two excellent limitations, and it's probably how I would look at it too, as far as the limitations go. That we are always wrestling with what we can and can't control in life. And sometimes maybe people have a disposition towards, first of all, just a sort of set point where they're at in their personality. With some people have a more internal locus of control. They believe that they are the source of a lot of what happens in their life, whereas at other times, and also just dispositionally, people might feel that they do not have control over their life and that others control them, or they're at the will of God or luck or something. What was called loci of control, or the locus of control, where you see control. And what tends to happen around self-help culture and self-improvement is that a lot of these ideas get complex, but they often, because people are seeking kind of quick fixes and very quick answers, and I don't think that YouTube Shorts and TikTok have made that any. People are still seeking those quick 30-second answers, and so these things get oversimplified so that people might feel that it's always good to internal locus of control because you are the cause of everything. But as you and I have mentioned, you could, if you really extrapolate that out, we're talking about, well, then you've caused everything in your life, even the things that aren't anything to do with you, which is your parents dying, or as far as we know, really is no good evidence for any kinds of thoughts or any particular emotions causing cancer. It's certainly not the idea that like causes like. There's some kind of negative belief about yourself that's causing a cancer. Maybe as close as you could get to your mind affecting your health is, well, I would say two things. Is one is stress, stress itself doesn't even directly affect health. There's other things in between that then mediate that effect on your health, and that's what I mean about the complexity. So there's an immune response that might be slightly different, or there could be I don't know. There's this. It's just much more complex than the idea that you have a thought and that directly somehow affects your cells in your body that then manifests a tumor. So I think even just the idea of what we can and can't control has to be approached with a sense of kind of wisdom. Really, I really like the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous serenity prayer, even though I'm not religious. If I'm going to say a prayer, it's going to be that one, which is, God grant me the serenity to the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I try to live by that. But the wisdom means that we have to kind of engage with not just the way we would like things, but also how things are. And so we're always trying for me, and I think even when I still see clients from time to time, I try to at least open people's minds to the idea that you really need to focus on both. You need to focus on your limitations and your limiting beliefs and trying to discover the things about yourself that you really can control and you can improve. But then also realizing that there are other things, and they're often things that are external to you, like life circumstances, which you can't control. There's a lot of randomness and chance, and that we don't want to waste time, focusing on those things, thinking we can control them. I think even for those of us who may really want to get a lot done in our lives and set these big goals for ourselves, it still makes sense to not focus on trying to control things that you can't, because you're just wasting time and energy. Yeah, I mean, that's something that I think that maybe dealt with one side of what you're talking about, but I lost track of. I tend to go on tangent.
It's really fascinating, but because I think we're really on the same page. The quote you just quoted, I have in my book, actually. I'm like, yeah, that's also the Stoic beliefs. Like, they beliefs have to, one you can control and which end. And I really agree with what you said, that it's more difficult and more complex, actually, and just saying, okay, I believe in something and then it's going to appear. First of all, you have to figure out whether it's possible at all or not, especially like what you said about cancer. Of course, you have some effects if you like live healthy and stuff. I think there the beliefs also like join in, because when you think like you can heal and you have a positive attitude, you're more likely to live healthy, and that actually has an effect on your health.
Yes.
But to an extent, like there's some parts of cancer you can't control, even though you are like have the strongest belief or anything. There are limitations. And I think it's a really good, as you said, like we have to be aware it's a little bit more complex than just saying, okay, I'm going to believe in it and then it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I really like that. So what I really wanted to know, you said you also did some new research. So if we are focusing on the second part of manifestation, like the one where in the magic, where you don't have to do anything, just believing, and then the good, but also, that's the problem, also the bad, you're gonna get into lives. What are the main things you found out in your research about the negative or maybe even positive effects on believing in the magic kind of manifestation?
We set out in 2023 to do a series of studies that would, first of all, just give us a way of being able to easily measure the degree to which people believe in manifestation. So that was our first goal. The second goal was then to use the scale and go, okay, people believe more strongly in manifestation. Some people believe less. Some people don't believe. Does that degree of belief affect people's judgments about the decisions they make, and then also does it affect their behavior? And so first thing we found was that people who were more strongly believed in manifestation, so we'll call them manifestors, they, first of all, it was associated with higher degree of hope. The way that is defined in psychology tends to be the idea that you have a degree of control over your life, but also that you believe that there are pathways out for you to follow to be able to achieve a goal. I would also say that there's another version of hope that I think is a bit more intuitive, which is the idea that, like, even if something's improbable, it may not happen, I still feel a sense of optimism that it could. So hope tends to happen when things are not always easily doable, but there's a possibility, and it keeps that possibility open. I guess that's in most ways a positive thing. It's certainly related to optimism. We found that manifestors are also more likely to feel good about themselves, higher self-esteem, self-efficacy. So that's confidence that they can achieve their goals. Mm-hmm. And have a little bit stronger sense of this internal locus of control. And so the extent to which those things are helpful and good, manifesting is at least associated with that. What I should say is we don't know which comes first or whether they arise together. So we know that there's certainly a relationship. The way that conducted the studies, we can't really tell whether someone believes in manifestation and that causes a rise in these sort of personal attributes, or whether or not maybe more hopeful people just naturally are more likely to believe in manifestation. But let's just say they go hand in hand. I think that's probably one of the reasons why people don't want to let go of a belief in manifestation, is because it is tied to hope. And we know that hope's important, especially when you're in times where that's the only thing that's getting you through. So I would never want to say to someone, give up your hope. What goes along with that, we also found that we asked manifestors and non-manifestors, just everyone in our sample, which I should say is from America. It was about 1,000, just over 1,000 participants, because I figured we should start there because it's really the origins, a lot of this self-help culture. But I have to say, and I won't go off on too much of a tangent, but I agree with you that it seems to be a phenomenon all around the world. And maybe later I'll talk to you about the fact that so many researchers are now picking this up, their own scale, the manifestation scale in their own languages, which I was super surprised about. Anyway, I'll get back to what we found. What we found was when we asked people to rate sort of the degree to which they would be able to achieve their goals in the future, manifestors would also rate higher on that. I think that is positive and make you believe that you can achieve and have greater success. But we also sort of thought to ourselves, well, how can we set up the study so that we could see whether or not it might also lead to believing that there's no real limits on success? Because when you read these self-help books, again, it's like your job as a coach and my job, I guess, is to open up possibilities for people so that they feel that there are certain things that were impossible are now possible for them, of course. But the idea of manifestation really is that this is a law of attraction. This is a sure thing that if you can do this well, there are no limits to what you can achieve. And so we wanted to really see whether or not that people put limits on what they could achieve. And we found that not really. The stronger you believed in manifestation, the more like you were to believe in kind of unrealistic versions of success, and that you would achieve those in a shorter time frame. So we looked at get rich quick schemes, and we looked at belief in achieving like a scenario, like a success scenario, like earning 300,000 euros, say, and having hundreds of thousands of fans, and how long would it take you to achieve that, and how likely you were to achieve it. The stronger you believed in manifestation, the more likely you thought you were to achieve it, the less amount of years you thought it would take for you to achieve it. And so again, within reason, that's okay, believe that, but at an extreme, it's kind of overconfidence because, we're certainly not all going to achieve goal, for example. It's just not 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 usually statistically a possibility for most people, especially in our sample. So, and that's again not a bad thing to have ambitious goals for. But what we also then found in our third study, as we looked further into this, is that manifestors are also more likely to have more risky investments, say have cryptocurrency investments rather than, say, a standard stock portfolio. And we were just in this particular study looking at financial decision making, and they were the more likely to have been. So our scale was on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being a strong belief, very strong belief in manifestation. And so for every one step that people scored higher on the scale, that their odds of having been bankrupt increased by 40%.
40%. Okay.
Yeah. It's a bit of an unintuitive statistic to understand. It's not the hugest correlation. When you think about bankruptcy, it's a pretty high, it's not a good thing for most people to go. And there are obviously many factors that factor into bankruptcy. So find an effect or a relationship at all actually quite surprising, because it could obviously be due to so many things, but this is just a belief. And if a belief in something could have that effect, that could make you more likely to have experienced bankruptcy, then I think it's something, and it's not something that necessarily you would be aware of too. We wouldn't be thinking, oh, geez, what caused our bankruptcy? Was it something to do with my belief in manifestation? It's definitely not on the top of the list. Most people would think that's the thing that would keep them away from having that kind of experience. We had some ideas about why that was the case. And so we could get into that, but I thought I would stop talking for a moment and see if you had any questions.
No, that's really interesting. As I when I heard it correctly, that the first really danger is bankruptcy. And as you said, I think it's really interesting because you would maybe you would think manifestation and the belief in magic manifestation helps you reaching your goals. Yeah, but it actually for many people it's it ends in bankruptcy. That's
on what's going well in your life and what you want in the future that you're not really paying attention to now that might be uncomfortable or negative. So that could be mounting debt. If you've started a business, I mean, to be honest, I've been in that situation. I think at the beginning of my coaching business, just so focused on the goal that I and it's almost like I'm making this gesture to the universe. I'm putting it out there. I'm going to invest all this money in myself, and that's going to show the universe that I'm worthy of getting this back in return. So that it could, we've got to do more research on it, but that it could make people make bigger for initial investments, but also not pay attention when things are going wrong. And that could be one of the reasons why it's related to having these risky financial investments and maybe even bankruptcies.
But do you have research on the other side? Because people could think, well, maybe it ends with bankruptcy for some people, but do you have also research on that it ends with being a multimillionaire as well for the manifestators? Or what is with the successful people? Are there manifestors or not?
Yeah. You have just asked the $50,000 question. Yes. In fact, it's the $50 million question. It's the 500 million. Okay, so I'm not going to give you a satisfactory answer, but I will give you the answer that I think is the case. And that is that it's incredibly hard to determine scientifically what causes success in life. And there's a few reasons for that. If you look for successful role models, it's one way that naturally we tend to orient ourselves. Who out there is successful in doing the thing that I want to do? And we'll often listen for their advice. And that it makes sense to do that, because what else are we going to do? We think that the person that has been successful is going to be the one that might have some wisdom that we could to take on board. And so I'm not saying that that's completely wrong or a bad thing to do. It does trick us into there's a few tricks that it plays on our psychology, which I wouldn't mind addressing. And also, even if you are successful and you want to be a role model to others, and you want to express your wisdom about how you achieve success, there are psychological biases that are involved in that process too, which makes it really hard to do what it really was that caused your success. If you're setting goals, the way you're able to fully research, prove, I guess, definitively.
We talked about the negative outcomes of the belief magic manifestation, and you just gave us a broad overview of a success. You told us that it's gonna end up it can end up in bankruptcy. In your research, did you find any other negative outcomes of the belief? Like, I don't know, on relationships or other negative outcomes?
We've found that if you believe in manifestation, you're also kind of you're more likely to value the extrinsic kind of goals in life. So more like being rich, being famous, being having an image that's appealing to others. You tend to value them a little bit stronger over and above intrinsic motivators, like paradoxically personal growth, deep relationships. So that's an interesting finding. And part of it is as well, I guess, we tended to, we focus more on manifesting these extrinsic goals, right? We were more focused on that anyway. I don't know if it's just because of the way our scale was developed around manifesting success, so to speak, that we found this, but I have found it in a few studies. So I think what that means is maybe people who really believe in manifestation are more materially focused.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that, ultimately, if you're setting goals that are more materially focused, again, really important to get a certain level of income, because that certainly can make you at least not be depressed. But there's a certain level of income that you can reach, and then the further you get into the upper echelons of income, that doesn't pay off the same as far as your level of happiness. So if I earn $10,000 extra, given what I earn at the moment, I probably would be happier, be less stressed. But if I earn 10 times what I earn next year, I'm not going to be 10 times as happy. It doesn't work like that. So as well, if you're placing all your happiness on these external goals and saying one day I will be happy when I have $100,000 extra or 3 new cars or a career that, everyone, looks up to me, sure, it make you a little bit happier. But if you're placing all your expectations there, then you're at the whim of life, really, being outside of you, forming to everything that you want. And then who really knows that if you set this big far off goal that you've never experienced before, whether you've been famous or not, how do you know that when you've achieved that goal, you're going to be happy? And a lot of the time people aren't. The evidence just shows that if you value extrinsic goals over intrinsic goals that are more around meaning and fulfillment, you just aren't as happy as people who have close relationships and spend time, understand that, being self-aware, and who make contributions to their community. It's those studies keep getting done and the same findings. So I would just say that, if you're very focused on manifesting these extrinsic goals, it might be time to just look closer to home and try to make the best out of what around you, and try to find that balance of being fulfilled in the moment, whether you find a practice, mindfulness, or even just spending with children, or and trying to balance out that drive to get these things, which can be very, very hard to do, because I think in life we are very much society really, in Western societies at least, there's so much pressure put on people to pursue those kinds of big.
Yeah, that would be my next question. We talked about it a little bit earlier, because I think it's really fascinating that it's an idea that is worldwide. And as you said earlier, I mean, the idea is not that kind of new, because in the book The Secret, which is, I don't know how many years old, but it's kind of old. So the idea of manifesting or of magic manifestation is in the world for quite a while now. But I think in the last few years, this idea had spread so much and like all over the world. Do you have any idea or any guessings why that is? That it just like it started spreading so hard?
I don't exactly know, but I think it might be TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect medium for these kinds of ideas because it's quick. People can join in together and do their little kind of rituals that are supposed to help manifest and put up their positive affirmations. I think that it also allows celebrities and other people to be more vocal about it and put their daily routines up. And, people have an insight into people's lives that are more personal now. If you're following an influencer, I mean, yeah, you've got influencers, right, who every day connecting with people and reinforcing this. When the book, The Secret, was released, you had the book. You could possibly go to an event once or twice a year, but you didn't have this daily reinforcement. And of course, with the algorithms now, the more you watch, the more you'll get of that content. So I would say that it's that. I would say that I think a kind of intuitive belief in manifestation has been around for a long time. I think this is just another, even before The Secret. I mean, The Secret was definitely the biggest trend. And when I started researching it, which I had the idea about 2019, I was worried. And so were my colleagues. They said, I don't think this is that popular. I don't think you have much success with it. I went on, the more I realized, oh, no, this is a trend. Maybe it's a generational too, where new generations coming of age into that age where they're thinking about their careers or thinking about their bigger goals in life. And TikTok then just fits right into that age group and is making these kinds of ideas go viral. What do you think? Have you noticed in Germany something different?
No, I have the same idea in Germany. And what I found really interesting, what you just said, is that it's manifestation, or the belief of manifestation is really related to material goals. I haven't thought of that before. And I think that really makes sense now, because that's what you want to get with the manifestation. And maybe it has something to do with that people are, as you said, it's more at the age where they really want to achieve something. And yeah, I think that sounds really easy, because people are in that age, they're like, the young generation is like, yeah, we want to achieve something now, especially for ourselves. Manifestation sounds like less work than actually having to do the work. My idea why it's so popular, because it sounds really easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's very appealing. I think it's appealing too because I think a lot of people are feeling very thwarted, so very stuck, and that there aren't a lot of opportunities opening. I think actually there's a lot of room for more research in this area. So it's not just about giving people confidence, but it's like giving people hope that that there's these pathways that weren't available to them before. Because now you've got this magical pathway. You've got this new thing that's got no constraints on it, like the boring stuff that, you've just got to do in life. And so that's very appealing to people. So I think if there was another positive about it, it's quite possible if you were going to do something really amazing in life, grow a business or make a big impact in some way, like probably when you start and you have that idea you're going to sound pretty crazy. And pretty overconfident. It's okay to start a big goal and have unrealistic expectations, because it's those people that have unrealistic expectations that end up doing something unrealistic, right? Achieving the goal. But I think it's probably more detrimental if you only rely on that, the longer you are into your goal, because of what I was saying before about the not paying attention to things we should be paying attention to, biasing ourselves just towards focusing on positive things. And I think the thing as well is of a fear of negative thinking, like you were telling your story and talking about that client. That's a lot of time and energy and fear you don't need to have, because it's not true. So it's why spend so much time worried about negative things. If you practice, say, acceptance or you learn to be able to look at things that are uncomfortable, then it's not really a big deal to look at those things now. So you're not scared. It's like the opposite of, if you think about it. So the interesting thing is, when we started this conversation as well, you were talking about, the idea of and it causing this thing out there in the world to happen, and then the same with the negative thought. And that's, in psychology, it's called thought action fusion, the idea that a thought's fused to an action in the world. And where they've really done work on this is how people with anxiety disorders, especially obsessive compulsive disorder, have very strong thought action fusion. And that means that, so for example, if I have a thought about my mother or father dying, that's a really intrusive thought if I believe that thought alone is going to make it more likely that they're going to die. And so then people get really anxious about that, and then that fuels some of those compulsions that people do to try to lower that anxiety, like hand washing or whatever it happens to be. So if you imagine that it's coupled with anxiety, it's like we need to try to have a relationship with uncomfortable things in life and the things that we would prefer not to be true, rather than just denying them or pushing them away. And so again, I think healthy manifestation is around just, I should be able to learn to have these relationships with,
Yeah, I think
bad or
that's really
negative
the most important thing you just said. Like, the idea itself is not bad. It could be that it helps people. As you said, if somebody's really depressed and the belief of just dreaming of a better life helps him getting out of that depression and doing something that's actually really good, then it's helpful. But sometimes then, if you take it too far and you're not doing anything, you're not getting a job, just waiting till you manifest the money, and it's getting bad. So this is what I found really fascinating about this belief. It actually can help in certain ways. In other ways, it doesn't. So the problem is not the belief itself. It's more the problem what you do with it.
Yes. And I think, I'm thinking of, it certainly is, I think as well, what actions that leads to. Well, again, it's hard to say. It's always been hard to talk about this to believers, but I do try to. But it's a tough situation, because it would feel like I'm criticizing someone's deeply held belief. And I would have to say that probably is what I am criticizing. Like, I feel bad about it, but it kind of is. Like, it's kind of the deeply held part. The issue was, it's your worldview, or the thing that you're placing as a philosophy for how to live your life. So I think if it's at that level that level of importance in your life, then it's probably going a bit too far, and that's actually where some of these issues come up. Maybe it is a bit about the belief, which I guess is where my focus has been. But I do agree that, of course, like, it doesn't really matter what you believe if it doesn't lead to actions or inaction. They're the things that really make the difference between whether you're going to get the goal or not. And for some reason, this belief makes you take action, then that's good, I guess, if it's a goal that you really want. If it's a belief that makes you just sort of sit back and think that it's going to come to you, then it could be negative. Agree that, like, certainly the most important part is what it makes you do or not do.
Yeah. So maybe that could be a recommendation for the listeners if you're struggling whether you want to believe in it or not. Maybe you have to look more into the actions that this belief makes you do. Like, is it working for you? And is it not only working for a short time, but is it also working for a long time? I mean, maybe you just feel good at the moment, but is it really working
Yes.
in the long run? More
Yeah.
into that.
I think there's good researchers to talk about that, about it's called like suppression, emotional suppression. You know, the idea that you might have to go into a meeting with a coworker and suppress your emotions is fine, you know, or you know, if you avoid thinking about something uncomfortable in the moment, there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes we have to do that to have good relationships and get through a stressful period. But if we do that and we make that our goal in life is to never think about those things, they're eventually they're going to come up. You know, we're going to sabotage ourselves, or we're going to have, I guess, stress symptoms or anxiety. And so there's some pretty robust findings of that the long-term suppression is the issue, rather than, it doesn't matter if you do it short-term, it can be quite handy. And so I think that's the same with, you know, these.
Yeah, I think that's a really good advice. You were saying earlier that you found, like, I just want to come back to, it's a bit different in different kind of country. What would you say is the difference
Yes.
that I found?
Was I talking about
You were saying
difference
something about the words they're using in different countries.
Oh, yeah, right. I'm yet to know, like, we're having it translated into, I've had researchers kindly reach out and ask to translate it, and I'm really, you know, interested in that. I'm wondering, like, whether or not it's got the same roots as here. So is it that I've got a researcher taking it into Indian, sorry, that'll be, is it Hindu?
Hindu.
Is that the language? Is it? Yeah. So, but then I wonder, is it something to do with, they've got a culture that might believe in karma, and is it sort of built in somehow to their religious systems? And so far, at least just by asking the researchers, they've sort of said, no, I don't think so. I think it's from the internet, you know. And I asked people in China and Japan who are doing this scale, and in Turkey and in Indonesia, and they're all saying, no, I think it's the Western influence, you know. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You know, so we're going to look at that. We'll definitely look at the roots of where is there a cultural influence from any kind of religious side of things? But I don't know. I've got a feeling it's going to end up just a phenomena, and maybe coupled with this natural tendency we have to want to believe that our thoughts can, it starts in childhood, really. Like there's literature in the developmental psychology about magical thinking being something that, you know, you believe that your thoughts can travel, you know, to someone else over there and they know what you're thinking, or you talk to your imaginary friend. And there's some basis to why we have this kind of belief just maybe broadly across cultures. And then that's just reinforced by whatever is happening at the time. But you can imagine it's in some ways a very capitalist kind of thing, because it's all about trying to remove all the obstacles in your way and it's very much ingrained with the American dream of through belief, you know, you're going to be able to rise above everything and conquer this thing. So
do you think the idea, sorry to interrupt, do you think the idea started?
Well, this is what I mean about karma. Like, I think it's very related, because, you know, the idea of karma is you get what, it's probably a lot more complicated than this, but yeah, I guess I would see it as you know, whatever you do in this life comes back to you in some way, and it's going to be part of your lesson in the next life. So if you extrapolate that out to say, you know, then that leads to that just world belief that I was saying about that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. But I think it's uniquely American, tied to the business world. So the history that at least I know of, it really started around the turn of the 20th century, where I guess you had psychoanalysis coming up as a form of, it was really one of the first forms of therapy, or even we'd say before coaching, it was the thing that was innovative, the idea that even though now we might look back at Freud, and I mean, maybe Europeans maybe feel a little more, you know, they look at Freud in a little bit more of a positive way. But I think that, you know, he was innovative at the time because he did believe that people could sort of introspect and go inside themselves and actually begin resolve things, which was I think a novel thing at the time. So when that happened, I think people started to think about the power of the mind in Buddhism and in that there was always that there. But if I moved to the Western side, I think that was very important. Then on top of that coincided with the belief in sort of the occult and magic, and then they also took up the idea and the power of the mind, and it became like the cause of illness being in the early 1900s too. And again, there is an analog over here in the Eastern world because you have Chinese traditional medicine and Indian medicine. They were, I think, more probably integrated with that. Whereas here, it very quickly moved from medical, spiritual sort of explanations into business. Mm-hmm. So you had books like Think and Grow Rich. You had books like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. And you had, the power of positive thinking and these books that started to really fuse these spiritual ideas and the idea of that there's something really almost supernaturally powerful about your intention and the power of your mind to focus and get things done, and that all great leaders have this personality or this will that is the self-made man, it was at the time what would have been said, and again, I think that's just it's really only half of the story. Mm-hmm. And again, behind those self-made men were usually very, very hardworking and supportive women. Apart from that, and I mean that's goes without saying, but I mean, yeah, just that idea of that it's a very powerful thing. That if success is defined by this entrepreneurial mindset, that we might need that extra spiritual help to give us the edge over all those other people that are trying to do the same thing.
What is your forecast like? How is it going to go on with this idea?
Oh, no, that's a good question, Anna. No one's really asked me that before. I think in the world in general, we're going through a very strange thing. I see it in America. I guess in academia, they call it neoliberalism, and what's another word for it? Mm-hmm. Basically, we've moved so far into the idea of the self being and the individuality and individual freedom that you go to that point where there really just isn't any reality up outside of what you believe. And again, there's a kind of truth to it from the perspective of whatever your perception of life is your own, and it is unique, and you can change your perception about life, and then life can feel and be quite different. So there's a truth to it. But when you take that out to a societal level, and everyone has their own truth, it's very hard to come together to agree on a shared truth. And so you see this political fracturing that's happening. I'm just saying in the United States, it's really bad. The point of not just that, you've got left and right having their own truths that are slightly different, but you can come together to make it work to the point where, someone like Donald Trump, I don't want to get political, but I think most people would agree that guy, his truth is made up every day when he gets up in the morning, and he happened to be a very big believer in the secret and those kinds of philosophies. He's got, and he has a lot of people around him who believe in the prosperity gospel and the idea that if you plant seeds of financial, it's very similar to manifestation, and we pick up on it in the scale to some degree, which is, God will favor you if you make contributions to the church, and it'll come back to you 10 times. And, so he's a very big believer in positive thinking and aim positive. The point where reality just doesn't have any meaning in it. It's just, it's all about marketing. But there's it's pretty negative sides of that, of knock everything down and build it up in your own image, and not really, because you don't value the fact that we have institutions like universities or medicine and health
Research.
systems and research, whatever. And it doesn't even have to be those kinds of things. It could be like, I don't know, community level things and groups and political affiliations that are important to have to develop those. And if you try to just knock them all down, everyone would sort of roam around thinking and feeling and being exactly how they want. I don't know how that works. I think this is why as well, like with this individual belief in you can just make your life the way you want it, that maybe is why we're in this moment where it's so popular. Maybe it'll change because of, like, if things really bad start to happen,
then people thinking about it.
I saw this clip once. It's a wonderful comedy sketch by UK comedy duo at the time called, it was Mitchell and Webb was their name, but it was a sketch where they wheeled this patient. They were doctors and they were in the emergency room, and they wheeled this patient into the room and they put him on the table, and he's obviously been in a car crash or some kind of trauma. And they said, quick, get me a vial of belladonna or something, with some homeopathic remedy. And, they said, right, this is going to, if this doesn't work, I don't know what will. And so they gave them the homeopathic remedy, and they said, okay, get me some elderflower and some bay leaf or whatever. So they were making the point, I guess, that there are some times we'll suspend our belief that we might hold. Is like, we might believe in homeopathy for like a sore back or some chronic illness, but probably to really test your belief or your car crash, be treated with these same drugs. I feel like that's where individual belief about things sort of then borders on, okay, so maybe there's some areas where it's really, really important to actually know what works and what doesn't.
It's really funny. I have to think of a situation. I was actually in labor, and there's a lot of like magic medicine when you get a child, especially like in the beginning. And I really enjoyed it in the beginning because you have nice creams and stuff, and it really feels good and you don't really care. But when you're in labor and you have really, really a lot of pain, and then somebody came to me and was like, yeah, I'm going to give you this homeopathic thing. And I was like, what? Please give me some real painkiller, like really strong ones. And they are scientifically proved that they're working. I don't need any like little elderflowers or anything now. I need real painkillers now, please.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And then some of those things, again, if they work for you, of a placebo effect, then that's great. But we're not actually in control of like whether placebo effects work for us. They either do or they don't. It's like the idea of hypnotizability. Is some people are just very open to suggestion and can be basically told to, you are a chicken, and they believe it, and then they cluck like one. Good for them, because maybe that would be great. They could use the homeopathic, and the power of their mind will just be able to create those endorphins, and that's great. But yeah, it's like, hey, I know that the drug will work for pretty much anyone. There'll be different tolerances, but give me the thing that knocks me out. Give me the epidural. Well, that's really fascinating stories that like when the real rubber hits the road, maybe that saying doesn't connect. Sorry, I don't know. There's so many Australians use as well, so many, phrases that, like, we'd say euphemisms, but, phrases that don't really mean the thing that they mean. Yeah, sorry if I said like rubber hits the road probably does not make any sense in translation.
That's good.
Anyway.
Yeah, but it's fascinating when you're saying that. Maybe that's why the idea of manifestation is really popular right now. I don't know which, depends on what, but as you said, the idea, like the US at the moment, that facts doesn't count anymore that much. It's more about believing and stuff. That all fits in this idea of like magic and stuff. So I'm really curious how it's going to go on in the coaching world. But yeah, I'm a general optimistic. So as you said, maybe it's going to explode really heavily, and then we start thinking about it again. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah. And I think, like, you think about online, it's easy to create. It's so much easier now. It's so easy to create an image of yourself that's in the image of who you want to be, your ideal self. There's some interesting research around ideal selves, and it goes back to one of our friends, I guess, would be Carl Rogers. And, the sort of one of the fathers of counseling and sort of the bedrock of all of that kind of, we do, being able to just sit with clients and have empathy, where he sort of said we all have a real self, like an actual self, and then we have these ideal selves. Forming an ideal self can be a source of motivation, like Gabriel says, that forming an ideal goal can be motivating if you don't think that you're there yet, because it's you to move towards it, because that's what you want. So that feeling of uncomfortableness of not being there yet move us towards the goal. Actually, the opposite can happen too. Tori Higgins has done work around this, where the wider away your real self is from your ideal self, the more depression, dejection, frustration, motivational. Again, there's probably an ideal gap that you're looking for as well when you're setting goals. And maybe that depends on you as a person. Some people might be able to handle larger, bigger goals where that's still motivating to move them towards it. Some people, if you're creating this ideal self and an ideal life, it just makes you feel like you're never going to achieve it. You're not there yet. Especially as well, if that goal is not connected, and I'm sure you do a lot of work with clients with it. It's not connected to your values, and that ideal self is just someone else's values or society's values. And then that's not going to feel motivating it's not a good source of motivation for you, at least. You'll probably hit a wall or sabotage yourself. I think that just creating an ideal self online, again, it could be motivating, but it's also, I wonder. No, I'm not going to go there. If I was just about to go off on another tangent, Anna, and then we'll be here all night. So I won't go there.
Do another interview.
Yeah.
We can talk for hours.
Yeah.
Is there any recommendations at the end of our podcast for my listeners? Like any more books you would recommend, or any more research like on this topic, which you could really recommend?
There's this wonderful German life coach named Anna, and she is releasing a book.
Of course.
What would I recommend? It depends on if it's about goal setting. Well, I would recommend Gabriel's Whoop method. If someone's sort of manifestation inclined, go and have a look at Whoop. I think it's whoopyourlife.com. But if you look up WOOP and
yeah, I also have a podcast with her. I think I talk about her method, so people can look that up as well.
That would be even better. And I would also say that the work that I've done around acceptance, there's two things that I would recommend. I'd recommend if you kind of need help, like therapy, if you look at things like dialectical behavior therapy or commitment therapy, I think both of those therapies are really good at wrestling with not just what you can but what you can't control. And it's a real nice balance, working on your mind and working on supporting yourself, and developing an internal locus of control, but then also understanding what you can't control and learning mindfulness. And so if it was at that level, but I'm sure that, some of the work that you do, Anna, is addressing that too, and found just helpful for self-help. There's a Buddhist nun in America called Pema Chodron, and I think her work's really accessible if you want to take Buddhist ideas and really understand about, she wrote a book called When Things Fall Apart. I just found her to be a real mentor to me, and it really helped me to think about as well, like how you can use your mind and be flexible. I think one of the things about Buddhism has been learning to be flexible with your thinking, to understand a little bit, be a bit more playful. And then that leads me to one more recommendation, which your listeners can take off, because it's very nepotistic of me to recommend my wife, but I'm going to because she is, she's an improvisational theatre and comedy teacher who also coaches people using improvisational techniques, improvisational games. It's the thing that most people find completely daunting, the idea of just being put on the spot and having to think on their feet and come up with an idea. And I think what she's taught me in her work, and also I'm going to call it a practice of improvisation and is cognitive flexibility and psychological flexibility. And learning how that when you're in a situation where you really don't know what's going to happen, and you're in an uncertain situation, that we all have these patterns and we all have these ways we go, sort of ways that have worked for us in the past, and we get stuck in these sometimes unhelpful defense mechanisms and behaviors that all come up when you're asked to improvise a scene, for example. But what the skill of improvisation's allowed me to do is actually it's the skill you build around being able to think about possibilities and think about all the different ways that this scene or this game or life could play out, and be very attentive to what's happening in the scene and working with, yes-anding what someone else is giving. I found a lot of benefit from that. Cognitive flexibility is the thing I think that's allowed me to try to develop that wisdom to know the difference between what I can and can't control. So,
that sounds really
that's what comes to mind.
Yeah. Please send me her website so I can put everything you just said in the show notes.
Yeah, well, look, I'm sure she'd love to talk as well if you ever get around to it. You want to do another English Australian version of
course,
of your podcast?
If the people are not like scared away now,
yes.
I would love to do another one in English. I mean, there's so many people who don't speak German, which I found really fascinating. That's just the way it's going to be. As I said earlier, I can't wait for AI to be that good that you can just speak in your own language, translate simultaneously. I think that is going to come and it's going to make it way easier. But until then, I'm going to practice my English.
Oh, you don't? Honestly, Anna, your English is great. It's, not at all would I have say that it's an issue at all. So anyway, I'm just saying that, and all the listeners can comment as well on how good your English is, Anna, just to give you some
thank you.
some self-esteem.
Germans are just so perfectionists.
Yes.
I mean, we always have to remember it's my second language. It's not my first language. Doing my best.
That's very good.
Okay, so thank you very, very much. That was very enlightening. Keen on seeing what else you're going to research, so keep me updated with all your new outcomes.
I will.
And
I mean, if listeners want to find me, I am. You could either go, if you look up Dr. Lucas Dixon with an X, and you could go to LinkedIn, or you could go to. I'm on X. I don't know how I feel about.
X? I don't know.
Oh, I like Twitter.
Oh, Twitter.
But
yeah, that's funny because in Germany, we don't use Twitter that much.
Oh, you shouldn't. It's terrible. It just happens to be where I am.
Yeah, we don't go there that much. I mean,
where do you go social media wise?
I think it's mostly Instagram and TikTok these days.
Right. Yeah.
I think
I can't bring myself.
No, I think I'm not on that platforms that much as well. I think these days people are trying to their own platforms, newsletters and stuff.
Yeah, there's what's that one that's really getting popular? I'm part of it. Right? No, I don't post there, but I listen to things on Substack. That seems to be something that's becoming popular.
Haven't heard of it.
Oh, that's really interesting. And I like that. I like the fact that everywhere in the world, the big cosmopolitan place like Germany, just, although they need something a little bit, you Germans need something a little bit more sophisticated than TikTok. You really do. Like, you're such a sophisticated country. I just feel like
maybe
you come up with something better.
Yeah, that's why X is not that famous, because you only have 30 words. Way too little for Germans. We already have this really long words that we need more space for words.
That could be it. That could be the restriction there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, be happy to keep you in the loop of what's happening. And thanks again, and good luck with the launch of the book in a month.
Yeah. As soon as it's going to be in English, I'm going to send you a copy.
Thanks.
Good. Thank you.